You're standing in a group chat with 12 other people and someone just asked who's bringing snacks for Friday. Nobody answers. You assume someone else will handle it, so does everyone else. 12 people, and somehow silence. You've felt this before, at work, on a group project, in a family group chat that only your mom replies to. But the real answer for why this happens is far stranger than you think. It isn't laziness. It isn't rudeness. It's a switch buried deep in your brain that flips the moment you stop being alone in a task. Scientists have a name for it, and it was discovered by accident over 100 years ago by a man who wasn't even studying human behavior. He was studying rope. In the late 1800s, a French agricultural engineer named Max Ringelmann wanted to know how to get more work out of farm laborers, so he ran a simple experiment. He had people pull on a rope alone and measured the force. Then he had them pull in groups and measured the force again. Here's what he expected to find. 2 people pulling together should produce exactly double the force of one person. 8 people should produce 8 times the force. Simple math, simple physics. That is not what happened. One person pulling alone gave, on average, a certain amount of force. 2 people together gave less than double. 8 people together gave less than half of what 8 individuals pulling alone would have produced combined. The bigger the group got, the less effort each person actually contributed. Ringelmann had stumbled onto something that had nothing to do with rope and everything to do with you. For decades, scientists assumed this was purely mechanical. Maybe people were bumping elbows. Maybe they couldn't coordinate their timing. Pulling a rope with 7 strangers is awkward after all. Surely that explained the drop in force. Coordination, not motivation. Then, in 1974, a researcher named Alan Ingham decided to test that assumption directly. He ran a version of the experiment where participants were blindfolded and told they were pulling a rope with a group. In reality, they were pulling alone. There was no group. There was no coordination problem. There was nothing to bump into. And still, people pulled with less force than when they knew they were alone. Something had shifted. Not their muscles, not their coordination, their belief. The moment people believed others were sharing the load, their own effort quietly dropped even when the group was fake. This is now called the Ringelmann Effect, but it goes by another name too, one you've probably lived through more times than you can count: social loafing. Why would your brain do this to you? Why would it dial down effort the second it senses backup? Think about it from a different angle. For most of human history, you were never truly alone. You lived in small bands, hunting, gathering, defending territory, raising children collectively. Every task was shared, and shared effort came with a hidden cost calculation your brain has been running since long before you were born. If a task's outcome doesn't depend entirely on you, spending maximum effort is expensive. Calories were scarce. Energy was currency. Your ancestors who conserved effort when someone else could carry the weight lived to eat another day. Your ancestors who burned themselves out on every group task, every time, whether needed or not, wasted a resource they couldn't easily replace. Effort to your brain is not free. It's rationed, and group settings are exactly the environment where rationing feels safest because the risk of the task failing entirely feels diluted across everyone else. In 1979, 3 researchers, Bibb Latané, Kipling Williams, and Stephen Harkins, wanted to see how far this effect went. Could they make it happen with something even simpler than rope? Something almost primal? They chose clapping and shouting. Participants were told to make as much noise as possible, either alone or in groups, sometimes blindfolded, and told a group was participating even when it wasn't. The results echoed Ringelmann's rope study almost exactly. Alone, people shouted and clapped near their personal maximum. In groups, real or imagined, individual noise output dropped, sometimes by more than half. The researchers called it, memorably, "Many hands make light the work," not because the total effort was lighter, it usually wasn't, but because each individual hand felt lighter. Each person, without realizing it, was quietly letting the group carry more of the psychological weight. Here's the twist, though. Social loafing doesn't happen every time you're in a group. It's not a permanent setting. It's conditional. When your individual contribution is identifiable, when people can see exactly what you did and didn't do, the effect nearly disappears. When the task feels meaningful to you personally, it also fades. When the group is small enough that your absence would be obvious, your effort climbs right back up. In other words, your brain isn't lazy. It's efficient. It is constantly silently asking one question in every collective situation: does my individual effort actually matter here, or is it invisible inside the group? If the answer is invisible, your effort drops. Not because you're a bad person, because somewhere in your evolutionary wiring, invisible effort was often wasted effort, and wasted effort could mean the difference between surviving winter and not. Now think about your modern life again. Think about every group project you've ever been part of where 1 or 2 people did most of the work while the rest coasted. Think about every committee, every group chat, every team meeting where a question gets asked and 13 people assume somebody else will answer. You weren't imagining it. You weren't just surrounded by lazy people. You were watching an ancient calculation play out in real time, one your brain runs automatically, in a room full of other brains running the exact same calculation, all of them quietly assuming someone else has it covered. It gets stranger too. This same mechanism helps explain something psychologists call the bystander effect, the disturbing pattern where a person in trouble is less likely to get help the more witnesses are standing around. More people should mean more help. Instead, responsibility gets diluted across every bystander, and each individual quietly assumes someone else will step in. Nobody does. Your brain isn't built to calculate the group's responsibility. It's built to calculate yours. And the moment other people enter the picture, that calculation shrinks. So what do you do with this? You can't undo 100,000 years of evolutionary math with willpower alone, but you can outsmart it the same way researchers did when they figured out how to make the effect disappear, make individual contributions visible, assign specific ownership instead of vague group tasks, keep teams smaller where your effort actually shows. Ask out loud who specifically is doing this, instead of hoping the group will sort itself out, because the group will not sort itself out. Not because people don't care, because deep in the architecture of your mind, effort has always been a resource too valuable to spend when you believe someone else might spend theirs instead. So the next time you're standing in a group chat and someone asks who's bringing snacks for Friday and nobody answers, look a little closer. It isn't 12 people being lazy, it's 12 ancient brains, all doing the exact same quiet math, all waiting for someone else to go first.